What we're going to talk about today is really the tomorrow's world or the future. And so I've sort of tried to do two things, one of which is a snapshot of where we're going at the moment and what implications that might have for the promotional marketing industry. And then I've sort of taken a view of sort of 20 to 30 years out and what that might mean to the promotional marketing industry and indeed humanity. The long-term view might seem a bit far-fetched for a lot of you guys sitting here who haven't come across concepts like the singularity before, but it is based on a lot of science, and I've actually been to the Singularity University out in California recently to explore it, and I'll explain in more detail as we get there. But if you haven't heard the concept before, you'll find that interesting and probably very scary, which most people do. So I'm going to start off by trying to put some historic perspective on things. When you're in the middle of something which is happening like the mobile explosion, the mobile revolution, it's very difficult to sometimes take a step back and see where you are in the context of history. And so I used this example of this gentleman who's called Harry Warner, who, as you probably may know, was one of the founders of Warner Brothers back in the 20s. And he's actually known as one of the fathers of the talkies. He actually introduced the talkies as a concept and really a founder of the industry, the film industry as we know it today. But at the same time, the year before he did that, he came up with this great quote of "Who the hell wants to hear actors talk?" Which he said in 1925. The first talkie came out in 1926. So if a great man like him had great difficulty putting his industry in context, it's very difficult for us to do the same thing today. So I'm going to start off by trying to put some historical objectivity to the mobile industry. The first reason why it's important is because it swallows other industries hook, line and sinker very, very quickly. To those of you old enough, this is a pager. We don't sell pagers anymore because the mobile used it. We don't really buy calculators anymore because, again, it's been subsumed by the mobile device itself. Alarm clocks have plummeted. Hardly anybody uses them other than on their mobiles these days. And the PDA market disappeared almost as quickly as it was born. And nowadays, people don't buy cameras very much either, because, again, the mobile has taken up the slack there. And that's just in the last few years that's happened. It's very difficult to remember that, 5 years ago we were buying calculators and alarm clocks and stuff, and we don't buy them anymore. Now, to put that into perspective, there's two types of people really. One of whom I call a conversionist, who thinks, hey, isn't it fantastic, we get all our stuff into one device and walk around with it and does everything we possibly want it to. And the other one's what I call a separatista. And a separatista says, hey, but look, actually my MP3 player, which is over here and it just plays MP3s, does it far better than the iPhone does because it's a specialist device. Therefore, I want to go around with all these devices which do best of breed stuff as easily as possible. There aren't many separatistas around, and the reason why is because of a point made by this gentleman called Jim Richardson, who was actually he's been a photographer for the last 30 years for the National Geographic magazine, and he creates great pictures like this. And I was lucky enough to be speaking on the same stage with him recently. And somebody asked him, as they do, my daughter is really into photography, what should be the camera? What's the best camera she could buy? And he just said, well, the best camera is the one you happen to have with you at the time. So you can get all the plans and everything, but to be honest, these days, he said, I often use my mobile because I just happen to have it there, and it's therefore the best tool for the job then. And that's why the convergenists are always going to beat the separatistas in terms of the overall trends. So let's look at what else is on the horizon being swallowed by the mobile. Well, first of all, we've got the video camera. We've got the whole gaming industry. Mobile gaming is already far, far bigger than any single platform by a long, long way. The fixed line is going to go away as well. In fact, a lot of people are abandoning, or what they call in the industry, cutting the cord. The MP3 player is going to go away, and I think one of the reasons why Apple actually launched their iPhone in the first place was because they could see the MP3 player declining in importance in their lineup, and therefore they had to go into the mobile phone industry. I actually kind of predicted by 3 or 4 years before that they launched it that they would be doing this, because you could see that the numbers of the MP3 standalone, the iPods, etc., was going to go down, and therefore they were forced into the mobile industry. And the whole sat-nav thing, if you've got shares in anybody who is in the sat-nav industry, I would sell them pretty quickly, because it's going to be taken over by the mobile pretty clearly. That's in the next few years. I know that, I'm sorry I missed a lot of the presentation today, but couponing is the next big thing, and certainly something I'm interested in. There is a bit of a gap at the moment in the market between what we should be able to do with things like barcodes and NFC and what we actually can do today. But there's no doubt that coupons, vouchers, etc., at the heart of promotional marketing and heart of actually stimulating purchases and driving people back into the stores is going to be on mobile in the next few years. M-Health, our mobiles will increasingly become a health monitor in the future, monitor things like blood pressure, etc., on a daily basis. And again, it'll be another reason why it'll be indispensable. We've already seen some stuff from Google about translation on the fly, where you can actually hold your phone to somebody who can talk in Spanish, and it'll simultaneously translate for you in English or whatever your thing is. So already the sort of Douglas Adams Babelfish idea of putting something in your ear which does a simultaneous translation is there, and it's going to be delivered again by mobile. It'll take over our locks, and it'll provide a recognition of that we can use uniquely to get into things which are secure and for us. And finally, it'll probably take over mobile payments too. So really what I'm trying to say is, in historical terms here, the mobile is going to be the only game in town in the future. It's going to be the most important thing. It'll be fundamental to any business that they have an understanding of the importance of it if they're going to succeed in the next 10 years. The next thing it's going to subsume, in case you hadn't got there already, was the PC and the laptop itself. And I've been saying for quite some time now that the mobile will do to the PC what the PC did to the mainframe. In other words, there's still mainframes around, but most people, most of the time, will be accessing their digital data via their mobiles. People of that stage often say, yeah, but the mobile isn't actually very good for creating documents, creating PowerPoints, etc. And the answer to that is that no, it's not. But there will be tools available fairly shortly which will allow us to do that. This is an example of quite an actually old application now, where you dock your phone into a keyboard and it allows you to type if that's your preferred input. A lot of people will be using more and more voice, as it happens, to control mobiles in the future. And obviously we've seen with the iPad a very simple tool there to create it into a sort of screen and a keyboard for those people who want to interact with their computers in the old-fashioned keyboard way. So these tools are starting to come in, and at that point, well, why do you actually need an old-fashioned laptop or indeed a desktop anymore? The answer is you won't. That'll also be driven partly by the developing world, who are leapfrogging the whole laptop and PC generation altogether and go straight to mobile. So when there's 3 or 4 billion people owning mobiles and no PCs in the world, that innovation and how they use it and the use cases they generate will start to overlap and flow back to us. And we'll very quickly from here see the end of the PC and the laptop.